What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is The Walking Dead Season 8, Episode 3, Monsters. If you're wondering if they were trying to hammer in that concept of are you going to be monsters or are you going to be good people, the title of this episode should hammer that in a little bit further. Yes, the concept that they're going for this season really is who are you going to be? Are you going to side with sort of the concepts that, people like Tara, like Morgan, like Daryl, their idea is we kill them because they're horrible people. They don't deserve to live. Or are you going to side more with people like Jesus or Maggie or who's the other one? There's one more that was on that side. I can't remember now. But anyway, that sort of idea of at some point we will have to find peace, which means yes, this is war, but it can't always be war. It can't always be we're just killing all these people. At some point we have to realize we have to find peace. We have to fight not for war but for peace. So it is very interesting, even if they are hammering in a little bit hard. But let's talk about some of the little stories going on in this one that sort of build around that. First of all, once again, kind of the least interesting story in these past two episodes. Eric and Aaron, for some reason, just got the spotlight in these two episodes. I'm not entirely sure why. I don't really have a problem with either of them. Aaron, in my opinion, has become one of my favorite characters of the past couple seasons because he's really stepped up. Eric kind of got pushed to the side, though. We knew that they had a relationship, but that was about it for a while. But for some reason, he sort of popped up in these two episodes because he's going to die, and Aaron is going to be upset about that. And that's about it, it just doesn't really feel like it's been coming. It doesn't feel like it's been leading up to anything. It just feels like, oh, we wanted to give Aaron a reason to hate them even more for some reason. He's already shown he's willing to fight, and he's willing to stand up right alongside Rick. I mean, near the end of last season, when we saw them working together to get the guns for the junkyard people, we saw he was willing to help Rick in anything. So why, why are we doing this again? Why are we giving him another reason to fight, with Eric dying? I don't know, it kind of seems a little bit thrown in there and forced upon us. But we see he takes Eric out to a tree, and Eric is bleeding out. But Eric's like, you have to go fight. They need your help. So, of course, he does go back to help them fight some more. When he comes back, though, Eric is gone. His gun is still there. And it looks like we see a walker heading towards another group of walkers out in the woods. So it looks like Eric has died and become a walker. It's not confirmed, so I'm not sure if maybe he'll pop up later. Like maybe one of the retreating saviors saw him on the tree and then took him prisoner or something. But whatever the case, it seems like he is dead, and Aaron believes he's dead. And ultimately this leads to Rick takes the baby out of the compound that he found, Gracie, and Aaron's like, I'll take her. I was going to go with Eric and give Maggie an update, so let me take her to Hilltop for you. So, I don't know, maybe this will give him like a reason to live without Eric, possibly? Like I said, this is probably the least interesting story because it just kind of feels like it's its own little separate thing. Aaron and Eric are not really tied to anybody else. They're just in their own separate world right now. But aside from that, we also see not one of the least interesting things, but probably one of the strangest things in this episode. We see Tara, Jesus, and Morgan and their group leading back these prisoners that they have taken of the Saviors. So we get to a point where they're walking along. There's this one guy being a total douchebag to Morgan because he wants Morgan to kill him, I suppose. I don't know, like he's just taunting Morgan constantly to the point where you're just kind of like, Morgan, just ignore him. When I play soccer and I go out there and some people are acting like douchebags on the field, they're just trying to force a reaction out of you. The best thing to do is just ignore them. Win the game and then shut them up that way. They won't talk if you've won the game. Same here. If you win this war, if you beat Negan and beat the Saviors, they won't talk anymore. They'll shut up. So it just feels like, I don't know, he's being very childish, and Morgan is falling for it way, way too easily. But at some point, these walkers start coming down the hill. just sort of out of nowhere. So they're having to fight them off. At some point, that douchebag and his group that are in their little line of, they're doing like the rope handcuffs thing, which I'm like, I'm glad they know how to do that, because that is a very efficient way to keep them in line. But he's like, all right, let's go, guys, come on, and gets his group to run off to the woods, which of course Morgan follows after them. He catches up to them and shoots one of the guys in the head, not the douchebag guy, of course, because he still has to taunt Morgan later. But Jesus shows up just in the nick of time before Morgan can shoot him as well. And then there's like a little bit of a confrontation between the two. Tara, the bow and arrow woman, and then one of the other guys show up to take them, the rest of the guys that are still alive, back to the truck. And then all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, Morgan starts fighting Jesus. I don't know why. It's not very clearly explained. I have an idea of what's going on, though, because they're fighting. Eventually, Jesus takes the stick from Morgan, knocks him to the ground, and is just like, are you done? Tosses him the stick back. Morgan stands up and puts it to his throat as Tara and bow and arrow woman and the other guy come walking up. And then all of a sudden, Morgan just like kind of blinks and is like, what? And then it seems like he's done. I have an idea that maybe he's suffering from some, like, I don't know, some sort of mental damage, which would make sense because he's been through a lot. But I'm wondering if possibly he has, like, some sort of multiple personality disorder, maybe, which would, of course, lead to this one persona of his. Whenever he gets really frustrated and really angry, he becomes that killing machine we saw in the last episode, alongside of the regular Morgan that we all know. So I'm kind of curious if that's what they're going towards, or if this is just some random thing where he just decides, I'm pissed off, so I'm going to fight you to release this aggression. I don't know. I definitely could buy the multiple personality disorder just because of how much Morgan has been through. But if they're just going to play it off as like, oh, Morgan gets really angry and starts fighting people, I don't know. It would just... It does remind me of that one time in the jail cell where he and Carol were fighting over the wolf that was in there, whether or not to kill him. It does sort of remind me of that a little bit, because he decides to fight her. Just, of course she instigated it, but the fact that he was willing to like knock her out in the process did kind of seem out of character for him. So I'm wondering if maybe that's what they're playing towards. But I guess we'll see later. Aside from that, we see, Morgan leaves the group, and then, of course, Jesus and the rest of them take the prisoners back to Hilltop. Meanwhile, at Hilltop, we see Enid is standing on top of the wall as a lookout. All of a sudden, she sees something in the distance, and, like, what does she see? It's Gregory in Father Gabriel's car. Yeah. This guy. So he's like, open the gates, somebody help me. They open the gates, Maggie's there, of course, and she pretty much just like, why on earth will we help you? What makes you think that we are going to help you? But he keeps pleading and pleading and pleading, and because Maggie's a good person, she's like, let him in. Here's the thing, and this is where the whole concept of duality this season has really... This is going to play in a lot going forward. I just know it is. Being nice people and being Negan seems to be the two sides that are kind of conflicting within Rick himself right now. He's trying to find that sort of middle ground, and he's got people around him. Some of them feel like they need to be ruthless and kill all these people. Then some of them feel like, no, we need to be nicer, we need to be kinder, because at the end of all of this, we need to find peace. So it's sort of playing both sides of it. We're seeing people who are on either side, but here's the thing. Gregory is the perfect example of why you have to be ruthless sometimes. Because we already saw in the first episode, Father Gabriel was on one of the kinder people's side. He was like, let me help you, and it nearly gets him killed because Gregory just completely leaves him there. So there are certain people you have to be ruthless with. You have to be ruthless with Gregory. You can't just let him into your base, because he's going to undermine you. He's going to do everything he can to try to get that power back, because that's all that matters to him. Yes, he'll do anything to survive, but that's also part of it. He's willing to do anything. He's willing to say anything to help him survive for the moment. So right now, he's willing to pretend to be friends with Maggie and pretend to give in to her leadership because he wants to survive. And he knows to do that, he needs to be here at Hilltop under their protection because he knows Negan is going to come after him with a vengeance. So he's doing whatever he can to survive, but as soon as the coin flips, as soon as Maggie and them look like they're going to be in trouble and look like they need help, he's going to instantly flip back over to Negan and try to hit them whenever they're vulnerable. And that's why people like him make me think sometimes you have to be ruthless. Sometimes you have to be a little bit of a darker side of yourself because people like him can't be reasoned with. People like him can't be just kept alive and like, all right, yeah, you're okay to stay, as long as you're good. Because at some point, it's going to come back to haunt you, just like Father Gabriel. Think about what happened with Glenn and, what's his face? The one guy that got Noah killed and then nearly got Glenn killed later on in season 7. That guy, Glenn was trying to help him. Glenn was trying to help him survive, but ultimately, he wasn't fit to survive in this world. And it got Noah killed. It nearly got Glenn killed. That's what happens when you deal with people like that in a kinder fashion. When you're not ruthless, it can nearly get you killed. So it's a very strange and difficult concept to grasp, but I'll be very interested to see how they're going to deal with it going forward. Are they going to find some sort of middle ground where you can be kind to some people and show mercy so that way there can be peace, but then for some people like a Gregory, like a Negan, you just got to deal with them. You can't just let them walk free. So, yeah, just kind of a little side bit thrown in there, but ultimately she allows him to come in, and then shortly after, Jesus shows up with all of the prisoners in tow, and so Maggie's like, trying to decide what do they do. Of course, Gregory pops in, and he's just like throwing his 2 cents in, we need to kill them, they can't be trusted. And I do love Maggie shutting him down on every occasion. Like he's trying to talk, she's like, Gregory, leave now. And I'm just like, yes, get him out of there. But yeah, so they decide to, keep him alive for now. Jesus does have a bit of a plan in place. They've got some trailers out back. They're going to keep him in with a guard in tow. I assume this is eventually going to come back to haunt them in some way. Either that or they're going to see the benefit of it. I'm not sure. But it's definitely, like I said, playing into that concept of duality this season. And then finally, the last thing to talk about is... no, wait. What am I saying? There are 2 more things to talk about. One, again, I'm kind of forgetting it, just like the last episode review I did. One is King Ezekiel and Carol leading some of the members of the kingdom towards this base. So we start off with them at the beginning of the episode. Ezekiel's giving a speech, and then they see, it's kind of flashing forward and backward, which a little bit clever, but I can kind of see what they're doing. It's pretty predictable when they did it this way. But we see them surrounded by all of these saviors. And then all of a sudden he's talking about, we have strategy, even if they have the numbers. Then all of a sudden Carol and her group show up from the bushes and kill those guys while Ezekiel and his men drop and start killing them. And so they manage to overtake him without losing anybody. And here's the thing. Once again, a little bit predictable. Ezekiel looks at Carol and is just like, not one. We have not lost one. You're pretty much just like... It's like every cliche thing you can say to foreshadow something bad happening. Oh, what could possibly go wrong? Well, looks like I'm going to see you for a long time. We'll talk after the battle. Something like that. Anything that just pretty much says, yeah, something bad's about to happen. So he says it there, and I'm just like, that's a horrible thing to say. They get to the base. We see them fighting. We see them taking out the base. And then at the end of the episode... they managed to wipe out the base, or so they think. And then Ezekiel, one of the guys is talking to him. He's just like, we still got everybody, sir. He's like, not one. Not one. And I'm just like, why are you doing this to yourself? First of all, who says that? I don't know. Here's the thing. It does make sense, but at the same time, for the writers of the show, it's very, very obvious what you're trying to set up here. That the first time they lose people, it's going to be heartbreaking. It's going to be tough. I get that. So at the end of the episode, whenever all of a sudden Ezekiel sees something in the window, tells people to run for cover, and all of a sudden, and everybody's getting shot. Yeah, I see that coming a mile away. It's not very shocking when you keep throwing in these lines like, we haven't lost one person yet. It's just, I don't know. Maybe it's just me because I've seen way too many shows and movies, but I kind of get frustrated when it's so obvious what they're trying to build up towards. But whatever the case, we see probably one of the more, I guess, prominent stories that are going to be coming out of this will be the fact that everybody like pretty much dives onto Ezekiel. We see like 3 or 4 people cover him and then take arrows to the back. So yeah, it is going to be interesting to see how Ezekiel is going to handle this thought of people just literally jumped in front of a bullet and an arrow for him. Like they died to protect him. I wonder how that's going to make him feel. Because he's been putting on this persona of the king for so long. Fake it till you make it, that whole story that he's been telling Carol. What happens when it gets real? What happens whenever they die to protect you because of this fictional story you told them? I wonder how that's going to affect him. I wonder if it's going to affect his persona in any way, if it's going to affect his psyche at all. I feel like it probably will. I really hope it doesn't turn him into like some sort of like little wuss, like now that people are actually dying in front of him and he's seeing death and he's seeing people die for him. I hope he doesn't turn into like, oh no, like I can't believe you guys, you did this for me. I'm not really that. I don't think so, because Ezekiel himself, not King Ezekiel, but the actual Ezekiel, seems like he's strong enough on his own to be able to take this in stride. Not necessarily play it off like, oh yeah, people dying for me, haha, that's why I'm the king. But probably will take it in his stride and use that frustration and that, I guess, anger with the death of his people. He will be able to take that and take the fight back to the Saviors. So I'll be very interested to see how they're doing it, but I do think this is going to turn Ezekiel into a lot more of King Ezekiel. This persona will become more real now because people are dying for him. And so now he has to be King Ezekiel. He has to lead his people into battle. So I hope they do something very interesting with it, which is more than I can say for Morales. So yeah, the beginning of this episode, we see Morales is talking to Rick. I knew Daryl was probably on his way because he probably heard the gunshot when Rick was fighting the guy earlier. Surprised it took him so long though. But yeah, so Morales is talking to Rick. He's telling the story of what happened to him. His wife and kid died before they even reached Birmingham. Eventually, he was found by the Saviors. And yeah, Daryl comes in and shoots him. Story over. I mean, why? Why couldn't you do more with this? I mean, maybe the actor that plays Morales was like, okay, I'll come back for a little bit of a cameo, but maybe he's got other stuff. Maybe he's on other shows and he can't do this right now. Okay, that's fine. But then why do it at all? It just doesn't make any sense to me, because this feels like it could have been a great story. You've got a character returning that knew Rick from before when he was just a cop who woke up in this apocalypse. Before he became the Rick we know now, before he did whatever it took to survive, before he had to take on Negan, before he got broken down and then built back up again, before all of this, he knew who Rick was before, but now he's heard this other story of Rick, and he's heard a different side of him, and now he's come to believe something else about him, and he himself, Morales, is a different person now than before when Rick knew him. So, what an interesting story that could have been. And then you just kill him off. Just like that. Before anything can happen between them. They talk. Daryl comes in, shoots him, and that's it. I don't know, it feels kind of like a wasted story, and I hate it whenever a story gets wasted. So, yeah, that is one thing that I'm definitely very frustrated about. I wish they could have done more with Morales. I wish they could have handled his story and his character a lot differently, because that could have been something really interesting psychologically for Rick to deal with. But whatever the case, they decide to kill him off, so now Rick and Daryl have to escape. They're being pinned down because Morales called the people from outside to inside. surprisingly enough, like the walkers outside aren't really bothering them at all. That's something that it felt like the walkers, when they started attacking, it felt like the people were like, oh no, what do we do? But the beginning of this episode, we see them just like, oh, there are walkers around. And then they're heading back inside, and there's still like 10 of them left. I'm like, what? Like, did the walkers do nothing? But anyway, we see they managed to fight the people off using some clever tricks and techniques. Fire extinguisher smokes the area, so they come in, then they toss them down the elevator shaft. Bada bing, bada boom, everybody's dead. And so then we see Rick and Daryl. They are taking everything from the compound. They're talking to some of the people there, and then trying to find out where the guns possibly went. All of a sudden, this one guy shows up out of nowhere, starts shooting at them, and Rick says, look, you're alone. There's walkers on the way. Do you want to do this, or do you want to give me information? If you give me the information, I'll let you leave. You can drive out of here. I promise, it's my word. So the guy's like, oh, okay, so puts down his gun, gives Rick the information, and then Daryl kills him, which I feel like they're building up as more of like a Daryl doesn't see the value of life. Like I said, he sees the saviors as people that need to be killed, because if they don't kill them, they could go back to Negan, they could report what's going on, and then that's dangerous for them. So he sees everybody as a danger, even if they're not really a danger. Rick is trying to find that middle ground, so he gives this guy his word that he'll let him live, and then Daryl just goes against it and kills him. Technically, Rick didn't break his promise, but you can see how frustrated he's kind of getting with Daryl, because, he comes in and shoots Morales, which is like, dude, you killed somebody we used to know, and then he kills this kid at the end, kid's young, and it's going against what Rick wants. So I feel like we're kind of building this up as like, it's going to be a bit of a showdown between Rick and Daryl as far as ideologies. I don't think they're going to like fight it out like Morgan and Jesus did, but I do think that's going to lead to a few arguments here and there that may split them up a little bit. So I'll be curious to see how they're going to handle it, but that's about it for this episode. So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on this episode? What do you expect to see next week? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Walking Dead reviews. I'll see you guys next week. Peace out.